Good afternoon to all our viewers. Good afternoon from Djuma Game Reserve, from myself, Mark, and Jared behind the camera, and welcome to our live PM safari today. A little bit windy, but a lovely warm afternoon nonetheless. Very warm for wintry conditions, but par for the course here in Africa, very low altitude. And Kath is in final control, so do join us for the next few hours as we head around this little section of the Sabi Sand, hopefully finding something special for you this afternoon. And also, hopefully getting some emails out of you and some questions to finalcontrol@safari.tv. And thanks for joining us. Let's go and see what we can find today. Use the slope to get down to the bottom instead of the engine, I think. Spot we sometimes stop at in the morning to watch the sun rising over the mist in the Mawati Valley. Slightly different perspective with the afternoon sun shining on the opposite slope, looking up onto the ridge. In the distance is more or less where Cheetah Cutline is. No real plan this afternoon. We'll see what happens when we get to a junction. At this stage we're going to take Twin Dams Road heading south towards Chelopand. Open to suggestions from any of you out there if you feel like you want to see anything in particular, not animal wise, road wise. As much as I'd love to oblige a lot of requests for different animals, it all hinges on whether those animals are around this afternoon. Startled Franklin's off to our right, quite deep in the bush. I wonder what gave them a fright. Good afternoon to Cheryl in Florida. it's Cheryl with an S, I think. Cheryl's asking about something that I can't comment on. Cheryl, hi there, and thanks for the question. Cheryl wants to know if we've heard anything about the Styx Pride losing a lioness. I'm just going to stop here because we're going to go through a dip, and I'll just chat to you quickly before we go through the dip to finish this question. But Cheryl, very, very often, because of the way where we are in this RV Sand and the way we work, we are not in contact with the lodges or the guides from other lodges, and I don't think I've ever been on the other websites, just purely because of time restraints. So very often the viewers out there, those of you out there who are in contact with other lodges, like at the EP Cam or at Nkoro Camera, you often hear things way before we do. So this is one of those incidences. You have heard something that we don't know anything about. So actually you are giving us news, and unfortunately I can't fill you in any further because this is the first I'm hearing about it. And I'll keep my ears open throughout Game Drive, and I will find out about it for you. It would help if you knew where that information came from, because that's always a great help. Then I would know who to ask. The last we heard, the Styx were, where did they go after the? I think they are on Elephant Plains somewhere. I don't know whether it's the little sick lioness or one of the others. I honestly couldn't tell you. As I say, you are giving us news that we don't know about. Unless Jared, you've heard anything? No. Jared hasn't heard anything. You see, it's very difficult for us with our commitments with Safari TV. Especially now in winter, our time frame between morning drive and afternoon drive, we have a lot to squeeze in. We don't really have the opportunity to go to other lodge websites and browse their news and things like that. And as well as the fact that that kind of news is not going to, so nobody's going to make the effort to actually call us up and say this is what's happened. And this is where our viewers come in to a very large extent, that we sometimes depend on our viewers to give us information, and very, very often you do, and very, very often we get more news from you than we do from the guides that we sometimes share the area with, because they too are not necessarily filled in with what's going on around until they ask about it on Game Drive. So thanks for your question, and I'll certainly keep my ears open, and if I bump into any of the guides this afternoon, I will ask them if they know of anything, and maybe we can resolve this. As I say, if you could just send an email, if you could maybe let us know where you read that or where you heard that from, because then it sort of narrows it down where the questions can be asked. And I hope I didn't answer your question, but I hope I gave you a satisfactory answer nonetheless. Onward ho.
Onward.
We've got a northerly wind coming in this afternoon. Very, very often when we get a wind coming in from the north, sometimes bringing weather from the south. Prevailing wind is normal, and every now and then you get a strong northerly wind coming in. Okay, thanks. Kapil, thank you.
Hello everyone, Catherine in Final Control here. Just going through a bit of a patchy area at the moment.
We'll just have a look at Gowrie Dam with Mark on the corner till we get to a better area. So stick with us.
Well, welcome back. We're just near Chella Pan at the moment, and thanks to Kathy and Liz, who both sent in some information that they got from Londolozi. Londolozi is somewhat to the south of us, a fair distance, and the news is that a lioness was found on one of the roads in Londolozi. I don't know the area very well. Only visited there a couple of times way back in the past, so I don't really know the roads. But yes, evidently a lioness was found dead today. Still no confirmation of who she belonged to, or what pride she was from, or who she was. So as yet, that remains to be seen. And I'm sure information will filter in through the afternoon, and we'll get more information out of either viewers or other guides. But as yet, not clear how she died or which pride she was from. So, there you go. Cheryl, you're the first to let us know about some information. And an email from Millie, also just speculation, and by the sounds of things, rumours. Nothing really very concrete, nothing really that is going to shed any more light on the matter. So thanks Millie, Kathy, Liz in the UK, and Cheryl. Gonna head up to the east, spend the afternoon in the east. We'll come back this side around sunset, I think. Actually, I think we ought to do Mumba Road first. I don't know how good it'll be. I'm going to try the riverbed. I have had signal there before. I'm just going to try the riverbed to Mumba Road. And actually method in that madness, or rather reason for it. We're back. We're taking a chance that we'd get signal in that riverbed. I just wanted to do the riverbed. When everything is getting dry up here on the higher ground, the elephants do tend to stick to the dry riverbeds. There's still subsurface moisture, or rather even water. There's still a lot of moisture for the plants, so still a little bit of greenery. and I just wanted to see if there was any sign of elephant down there, but there wasn't, sadly. So we're on Mumba Road, we're heading east. We'll have a look around in this southeastern corner a little bit, and then maybe move up Cheetah Cut Line. You know, we'll see which way the wind blows. Thanks, Kat. And just on another lion note, on another note about lions, there was let's stop again. Let me just have a quick hook up. I'm sure this must have been an old boundary road. There used to be a pipeline here. When I came in this morning to final control, oh, the sun's pretty low. There was a lot of talk about a lion that had been at Elephant Plains at EP on their camera, and a lot of people writing in asking if it was Mr. T and saying how sick he looked and he was limping. During the drive I did switch over to that camera just to have a look, because I had to see what everybody was making a fuss about. And at the time the sun was just rising, he was lying on his back. To me, he looked like he was a fairly well-fed lion, the way lions sleep when they've got a full belly. Some of you are saying that he looks sickly, that he's thin. Once again, I'm sorry, but I cannot comment on it. I haven't. All I saw was a lion lying on his back for a few minutes. I couldn't watch it for very long. Well, I was directing. Patrick was driving around. We were having quite a bit of signal breakup this morning, so I was actually quite busy with that. In fact, I didn't even get into chat very much this morning because we were constantly breaking up with signal and my hands were busy elsewhere. Colleen did mention that she thinks it might be one of a group of males known as the golf course males. Now, this is a new name to me. I believe it was a new name to Patrick this morning. I don't know about them. He did look like a strange male. When I saw a photograph of him, somebody posted some photos from the infrared on my Facebook page, to whoever that was. Thanks for that. Doesn't help me very much, but what it does look like is he's got a stripe of dark mane and then a dark mane coming round, and he's got, seems to be bald patches on either side of the back of his head. Now, evidently there's some characteristics or characteristic markings of him that Colleen seems to recognize as one of the males from this group known as the golf course males. And once I can't comment on that. I don't know them. I've never seen this lion before. He evidently has an injury on his left hip and he's limping with one of his shoulders. So whether he's had a run-in with other lion or what his particular problem may be, I'm afraid I can't comment. I don't know how I can maybe emphasize that what goes on in between game drive times, in other words, between our PM drive and our morning drive, and between our morning drive and our PM drive, there is nobody out in the bush at that time watching things, unless it was like the case last week when those males were fighting and the guys were out there at midnight watching it. That was extreme circumstances. But I think that a number of people think that we're in a relatively small area and we're able to watch these animals 24 hours a day. When we're watching lion, we're seeing 5 or 10 minutes out of perhaps sometimes even a lifetime. and circumstances surrounding their condition and the way they get to that condition may be never known. And I understand a lot of concern from a lot of people, and I wish I could satisfy that concern. I wish I could say something about it that would make you not so concerned. But one thing I do have to say is, this is the way nature has been doing things for a couple of million years, no, more than a couple. Well, mammals have been around for 65 million years. Lion in their present form probably for a good 30 of that. Or maybe not that much. Lion in their present form maybe 2 to 3 years, 3 million years. What nature does is way beyond our control. And we are in an area where nature does play its own dramas every single day. And we try not to be any part of that other than as voyeurs, other than as observers, trying to learn and understand the ways of nature. And we're very, very limited to the amount of time we can spend in it. And the times that we are in it, as like today and the last few drives that have been very, very quiet, we have no way. There could be a lion 10 yards off of the road, we wouldn't know about it. There could be a drama happening 100 yards off of this road right now. I won't know about it. Even sitting quietly now, got a bit of a wind blowing, and no way of, unless there's some really vicious sounds, no way of knowing what's going on. And I'm sure it must be quite frustrating for some of you when we see some of these things that have happened to the animals and we can't get answers out of us. It's equally frustrating for us not being able to give you answers, but there's absolutely no way for us to find these things out post-event, unless there was somebody witnessing these events. So I guess it's like a long way of apologizing. I just can't give you information. There might be information coming from other guides, but until that happens, I can't say anything about it. I can't offer any insight into the incident, or why this male is where he is, why he's alone, why he's injured. I also wouldn't like to speculate that he doesn't want to be with other lions, or that he's Mr. T, or that he's... it's in an area that is off of our traversing property, so there's absolutely no way of following it up personally, other than finding out from other guides. I don't know if that's I don't know if I've articulated what I've been trying to say. Just that I wish we could give you better answers. And I wish, well, this unfortunately isn't a way to do that. So, let's see what we can find on a more positive and light-hearted note. You got hay fever?
Cold, I've heard from the past. I don't know how long.
Oh, sorry to hear that. Touch wood, I haven't yet.
Hello everyone, Catherine here from Final Control. Just going through a little bit of a bad area at the moment, and hopefully once we come out on the other side we should be good to go again.
Well, welcome back. Seems to be another patch to take note of there on Nomba Road as we go through that long dip. Either that or there's something else atmospheric that is affecting signal today, because there seem to be a few more areas that normally are good we're having problems with. Let's see if I can do Leadwood Road onto Gary Main and back up again to Cheetah Cut Line. I'd like to just do a loop around there. See a little bit of smoke way in the distance. It could be fires down in the south. Could be there are fires down in the south and the southwest, sorry, not east, southwest. Might get to see them from Cheetah Cut Line, or just get to see some of the smoke. Just a typical sight in Africa this time of the year. Bush gets very dry, areas get burnt, fires get out of hand. Managed to see a gap. We can see the smoke straight ahead of us. The source of it might even be outside the Sabi Sand. I'm looking way to the southwest. I don't know if Jared can get that on the horizon through that gap. But boy, that's very far away. Oh, it is Sabi Sand. And it's not that far away. Very bad time of the year to be burning, unless it's an accident. Trying to think where that would be. That possibly is placed. That is possibly Mala Mala. What could be doing is they could be burning fire breaks. It doesn't look like it's very big, and it doesn't look like it's been burning for very long. And one of the most effective ways of making fire breaks is actually to burn them. Doing traces about 30 meters apart and burning a fire break in between. Okay. Randy asking about dung beetles and termites. Are they active now in the dry season, in the winter months? Termites are pretty much active all year round, Randy, but they're active underground. They are constantly processing dead wood, feeding larvae, growing fungus farms. They're a very active society. But termites are not very active above the ground throughout most of the, well, even in the wet season. Termites have evolved the subterranean lifestyle, what we call a fossorial lifestyle, that they don't have pigment, they don't have eyesight, They also don't have the hardened, typical hardened body of most insects living in such a confined space underground with pretty good protection. It's been a very young zebra. In fact, been 2 young zebra here with their mothers, but they headed north. Their environment, and we're talking mostly now about these pinnacle mount termites. I mean, all the other termites that I will speak about will take me the next hour or two, all the other different species of termites. But temperature regulation within the termite colony is exceptionally critical, and it stays a very constant temperature that's warm enough for them to not even be aware of how cold it is outside. They are aware of it from the point of view of concentrating the bulk of their activity in an area where they're going to generate the most warmth. But during the summer months, when it's exceptionally hot, they'll move most of the activity lower down into the nest, and now in the cooler months they're a little bit closer to the surface. And that activity is all centered around the queen and laying eggs and feeding her, and that's what generates some of the heat. Their fungus gardens generate a lot more heat because when a fungus spores, it is a chemical reaction that causes heat. And let's go to Leadwood Road. Dung beetles, on the other hand, are dormant. In fact, very few dung beetles are still alive right now. Most dung beetles die at the end of the season, and their larvae are all underground in balls or in chambers. There's so many different species of dung beetle, and each dung beetle species has a different method of collecting and storing dung, and there are only really very few species which roll the ball. In much the same way as there are only very few species of termites out of all the hundreds that actually make termite mounds. Most of the termite species we don't even see because they don't make mounds, and most of the dung beetle species we don't see because they don't make balls. Some of them bury directly underneath the dung heap and create chambers underneath the dung heap. Some of them just lay their eggs directly in dung, very small ones. Some of them are parasitic on other dung beetles' balls. But as with most insects, one of the reasons why there aren't that many insects, and that's one of the reasons why a lot of the insect-eating birds have moved away, because it's very dry and very dusty, and of course it's cool. Warm during the day, but it doesn't really help when you've got cold nights. And insects need not only warmth to move around, but they need a fair amount of moisture. And with these very dusty conditions, it could be detrimental to a lot of insects, especially beetles, the size of dung beetles. We have this very hard exoskeleton of a dung beetle, and in order for it to move, it has these very soft membranes in between the segments. Much like, if any of you know about diving and underwater exploration, there's that dive suit called Jim. Astronauts using space suits. Well, I'm not so much about the space suits of astronauts, but if you do a quick Google on Jim, J-I-M, the dive suit, you can see it's quite solid, but it's got these movable joints. It's very much like an insect. Now, the very thin membrane between the joints of insects can get scratched very easily with dust particles, and with a scratch comes moisture loss or water loss. And insects, being very small creatures, can dry out and die very quickly, very easily. And so insects aren't really that active right now. Some insects are, obviously. Always got flies. Some grasshoppers still active. A lot of moths. There are a lot of moths that are around in the winter to lay their eggs for the summer season, so that when the new growth starts, their caterpillars hatch. Caterpillars that are dependent on new growth leaves, because they're so small they can't eat all mature leaves of plants. They've got to eat this fresh new green growth as it's coming out, and they will grow with the leaves as they eat. What else? We've had recently a flurry of male driver ants flying around. Why they have been out, I don't know. But that was only for a couple of nights, a few nights ago. Bats are still out. Bats are still finding insects flying around. They're obviously not feeding as much as they do in the summer months, but there are still bats in the evening, and they're all insectivorous bats. We don't get any fruit bats in this part of the world. We don't have the trees that accommodate fruit bats. I did once hear an epauletted fruit bat, but it must have been a flyover, must have been passing through. And there are fruit bats down on the Sand River and the Sabi River, the big sycamore fig trees and other large trees in that riparian vegetation that the fruit bats call home. But we don't have any of them here. And they're the nectarine bats, which we don't get here either. Nectarine bats feeding on the likes of sausage trees and baobabs.